Matt Colville and MCDM are releasing their brand new RPG, Draw Steel, very soon. The tentative release date is mid-July, and given that the release is so close now, tantalizingly so, I decided that I would make a series of videos teaching you guys how to play my new favorite RPG. Draw Steel is a tactical, heroic, epic game for people who love a great combat with fast-paced gameplay and wonderful roleplay opportunities, with lots of fun mechanics both for RPing with NPCs and battling against your foes. It is awesome, and I want to teach you guys how to play it. So let's start with the dice. As with many TTRPGs, the gameplay loop of Draw Steel revolves around you role-playing your characters doing things. When you encounter things that are difficult to do, you roll a dice to see how well you do them. In Draw Steel, the dice you will be rolling the most is the D10. 2D10 specifically. This is your power roll. When you make a power roll, you roll 2D10 and add the number together. But, like with every RPG, some characters are good at some things, while other characters are good at other things. Let's take a specific character as our example throughout this video. My Draw Steel character, Yumi, an elven talent. Yumi here is quite clever, but not very strong, so her characteristics are going to reflect that. Your characteristics are your primary traits. These are things that showcase what your character is good and bad at. Think of like strength and intelligence if you're coming over from Dungeons & Dragons. In Draw Steel, these characteristics are might, your strength and brawn; agility, your coordination and nimbleness; reason, your mind and education; intuition, your instincts and experience; and presence, your charisma and force of personality. Let's take a specific power roll example to see how these characteristics can work in action. Yumi has been caught by a guard captain and she's about to be arrested. She's trying to convince this guard captain not to arrest her. Okay, so I'm going to roll my 2d10 power roll, and the DM specifically asks me to roll for presence. I'm talking to this guard captain. I'm using my force of personality. So I roll 2d10 and add my presence. How do we determine the result, though? Well, that depends on the tiers. You see, each power roll has 3 tiers of success and failure. If you roll an 11 or below, that is tier 1, a failure typically. Tier 2 is going to be 12 to 16. That is going to be a moderate success. And tier 3 is 17 and above. Best of the best, critical success. So, with this example, Yumi is talking to a guard captain about to arrest her. She rolls her power roll and adds her presence. And she doesn't roll great. A 3 and a 3. She does add +2 from her presence, but that still totals out to just an 8. Definitely within the 1 to 11 threshold for a tier 1 roll. AKA, probably a failure. Yumi is going to jail. But let's rewind for a second here. Yumi throws a 6 and a 4 on her power roll and adds +2 from her presence. That's a total of 12. That's a tier 2 roll. Now she has a moderate success. She has successfully convinced the guard captain not to arrest her, but it's not like she's absolved of everything. The guard captain probably saw her doing something suspicious, so she lets Yumi off with a warning, or maybe she sends another guard to go follow Yumi around to make sure she's not committing any more crimes. Now, rewind once more one last time, and you guessed it. This time, we're gonna roll a 9 and a 10. This, plus my presence, is well above a 17, a tier 3 critical success. In this case, Yumi convinces the guard captain not to arrest her, but the DM, or the director, maybe will throw me as the player a little bonus for such a great role. Maybe the guard captain will offer Yumi directions on where she could go next, or perhaps the guard captain will profusely apologize for wasting my character's time. Something like that. This is baseline for every single roll you're going to be making in Draw Steel. Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 with those exact same arrays.
Editor's note, the Game Master can make tests more difficult by adjusting the result of each tier. Like, for example, on a hard test, you require a Tier 3 roll in order to have any success at all. Every other roll would result in a failure with consequences. We'll go more in depth on this when we cover the GM end of the screen.
There are ways that players can make rolls a little bit easier, though, and that is with their skills. Skills are more specific than the vague might, agility, presence kind of stuff. Skills might be things like your jump skill, your climb skill, your lie skill, your persuade skill, your read person skill, your criminal underworld lore skill. I'm not even kidding. There are a ton of skills in this game, and it is not up to the GM to remember them all. Keep in mind what I said earlier. It's up to the players to use these skills to make their roles a little bit easier. Let's go back to our guard captain who's trying to arrest my girl Yumi. Here, the DM asks me to roll for presence to not get arrested, but I have something more specific in mind. I say, hey, DM, director, I want to use my flirt skill and flirt with the guard. Perhaps I'll roleplay it out, but the end result is the same. The DM will probably agree to allow me to add my flirt skill. See the difference there? The DM, unlike in a game like Pathfinder Dungeons & Dragons, is not specifically calling for a skill. They call for the more vague thing like presence or might. It's up to me as the player to look at the skills that I have in my character sheet and tell the DM, hey, I want to specifically use this. It puts the ball in the player's end of the court and makes me be creative with the skills that I have. You might be asking what a skill does specifically, and it's simple. A skill just adds an additional +2. And when all you need to do is get an above an 11, an additional +2 makes a really big difference. In this example where I'm flirting with the guard, I roll my 2d10, add my presence, which is +2, and add the skill bonus, which is an additional +2. This makes it very likely that I'm going to succeed in flirting with the guard and not getting arrested. Great. Now that's how a player can affect the result of a roll. What about the DM, the game master, the director, the person who is running this world and this narrative? Well, perhaps they will use their edges and their banes. Edges and banes are the equivalents of something like advantage and disadvantage if you're coming over from D20 Fantasy. Edges add +2 to a roll, whereas a bane will subtract 2 from a roll. Edges and banes can be inflicted upon enemies and allies by monster abilities or player character abilities, or contextual happenings. Like, for example, if Yumi's trying to kick down a door, perhaps one of the players help her out. Or perhaps the DM says the door is particularly weak from some previous break-in and decides to give me an edge. Like I said earlier, an edge gives you a +2. So yes, Yumi's not a very mighty girl. Her might is quite low, but a +2 from the edge might balance that out, meaning that I got a decent chance of being able to kick this door down. Now here's the neat thing. Edges and banes, they can stack. If you roll with 2 or more edges, you get double edge. If you roll with 2 or more banes, you guessed it, you get double bane. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, if you roll double edge, you gain an entire additional tier rather than just +2. And if you're rolling with double bane, you lose the entire tier rather than just -2. Okay, let's see this in action. We're going back to Yumi trying to kick down that door. Instead of just one party member helping me out, maybe the entire party pitches in and helps my girl to take this damn door down. The DM decides, hey, you guys get double edge, meaning when I roll my power roll, if I get a 12, which is a tier 2 success, it jumps all the way up to a tier 3 success. That's really damn good. If you're rolling with double bane though, like for example, if the door is like reinforced steel with mighty locks that prevent it from being kicked down, the DM says maybe it's still possible, but it's gonna be really, really hard. So I'll roll with a double bane. Now, that 12, which would normally be a moderate success, is downgraded by an entire tier to tier 1, which is a failure, meaning Yumi is probably going to be very sore after failing to kick down that door. Double bane effectively means that you need to roll a tier 3, a critical success, to even get a moderate success of tier 2, since you're losing an entire tier when you roll. Edges and banes might not seem like a big deal. +2, -2, who cares? But once they start stacking, they can really, really shift the dynamic of a dice roll. It's up to the DM sometimes to figure out when to use edges and banes, but it's not like the players can't do anything about it. Edges and banes do cancel each other out. So if you have a way to help out your party members, do so. If you really want them to succeed, take a look at your abilities and see if you can give them a helping hand. So yeah, I think we just covered all the basics of dice rolls in Draw Steel. We covered the power roll, we covered your characteristics to determine what your character is good or bad at, We covered the tier system, which determines the result of the roll. We covered your skills, and we covered edges and banes, how DMs and players can affect the way a roll turns out. From here, you should probably check out our video about abilities, where we go over abilities that you can use both in roleplay and combat and Draw Steel, and all the unique ways that they can affect the game around you, as well as our video about character resources, where we go over all the other fun stuff on your character sheets that will determine the outcome of your epic adventure. I hope you guys enjoyed. Now, get out there and draw steel.